In 2008, while the entire world was watching their investment portfolios collapse and their retirement dreams evaporate during the financial crisis, a small group of investors were doing something that seemed absolutely insane to everyone around them. They were buying, not just buying a little bit here and there, but aggressively purchasing stocks in sectors that everyone else was desperately trying to escape. Bank stocks, real estate companies, construction firms, the very sectors that were being blamed for destroying the global economy. These investors were called crazy, reckless, even stupid. Fast forward just 5 years to 2013, and those same investors had multiplied their money by 5 times, 10 times, in some cases even 20 times their original investment. They didn't have a crystal ball, they didn't have insider information. What they had was something far more valuable. They understood which sectors were positioned for the next wave of growth, and they had the courage to act when everyone else was paralyzed by fear. That ability to identify the right sectors at the right time is quite possibly the most powerful, wealth-building skill you can develop. And today, we're going to explore exactly how you can use this same approach for the coming years. I hope you are doing well. Please like my video and subscribe to my channel. I would love to know where you are watching this from, so please comment your name and country. Today, we are going to talk about best sectors to invest in for 2025-2026. This is going to be an incredibly detailed journey through the sectors that are positioned to dominate the next few years, and I promise you, if you stay with me until the end, you'll have a completely different understanding of where the smart money is flowing and why. Before we dive into specific sectors, I need you to understand something fundamental about how wealth is actually created in the stock market and through investments. Most people think investing is about picking individual companies, finding the next Apple or the next Amazon. And while that can certainly work, it's incredibly difficult, and honestly, most people get it wrong. Even professional fund managers who spend 80 hours a week analyzing companies can't consistently pick winning individual stocks. But here's what actually works with much higher probability: identifying which sectors are about to experience massive growth and then investing in the best companies within those sectors. Or even better, investing in funds that hold baskets of companies in those sectors. Think about it this way. If you had invested in almost any technology company in the late 1990s, you probably would have made money, at least for a while, because the entire sector was exploding. If you had invested in almost any energy company in the early 2000s, when oil prices were skyrocketing, you would have done well. If you had invested in almost any company related to mobile computing or cloud services in the 2010s, you would have seen tremendous returns. The sector matters more than the individual company in many cases. So, when we talk about the best sectors for the next few years, we're really talking about where the massive waves of money, innovation, and growth are going to flow. Now let's talk about the first mega trend that's going to define the next several years, and this is something that most people are still not taking seriously enough. Artificial intelligence is not coming. It's already here, and it's accelerating faster than almost anyone predicted. But here's what's interesting. When most people think about AI investing, they immediately think about the obvious companies, the big tech giants that are building the AI models. And yes, those companies will likely continue to do well, but they're also already priced for perfection. Their stock prices already reflect the expectation that they'll dominate AI. Where the real opportunity exists is in the infrastructure that supports AI and the companies that will use AI to transform their industries. Let me explain what I mean. AI requires absolutely massive amounts of computing power. We're talking about data centers that consume as much electricity as small cities. These data centers need to be built. They need semiconductors and chips that are specifically designed for AI workloads. They need cooling systems, because these chips generate incredible amounts of heat. They need networking equipment to move unbelievable amounts of data around, and they need electricity, lots and lots of electricity. This creates opportunities in semiconductor companies that make AI chips, not just the famous ones everyone knows about, but also the smaller companies that make the equipment used to manufacture those chips. It creates opportunities in data center real estate investment trusts, companies that own and operate these facilities. It creates opportunities in utilities and energy companies that can provide reliable, preferably clean power to these data centers. It creates opportunities in cybersecurity companies because as everything becomes more connected and AI-driven, the potential damage from cyber attacks becomes catastrophically larger. But it goes even deeper than that. Think about what happens when AI becomes truly integrated into how businesses operate. Customer service gets transformed, which creates opportunities in companies that provide AI-powered customer service platforms. Healthcare gets revolutionized because AI can analyze medical images faster and more accurately than humans. It can predict which patients are at risk for certain conditions. It can help develop new drugs by simulating millions of molecular combinations. This creates massive opportunities in healthcare technology companies. Manufacturing gets completely reimagined because AI can optimize supply chains, predict equipment failures before they happen, and run factories with minimal human intervention. This benefits industrial automation companies, robotics companies, and the sensor companies that provide the data that AI needs to make decisions. The financial sector gets disrupted because AI can detect fraud patterns, make trading decisions, and assess credit risk better than traditional methods. Even creative industries are being transformed as AI helps with everything from graphic design to music composition to video editing. The point is this: the AI revolution isn't just about a handful of big tech companies. It's going to touch every single sector of the economy, and the companies that successfully integrate AI into their operations are going to dominate their competitors who don't. This is why I believe AI and AI-adjacent sectors represent one of the most significant investment opportunities of the next decade, not just the next 2 years. Now let's talk about something that most investors are completely overlooking, and this is where I think some of the biggest opportunities exist for people who are willing to do a little bit of homework. The global infrastructure rebuild that's happening right now is absolutely massive, and it's being driven by several factors that are all converging at the same time. First, you have developed nations like the United States, where the infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, electrical grids is old and crumbling. The American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that the United States alone needs to invest over $2 trillion just to bring existing infrastructure up to acceptable standards. Then, you have the energy transition happening globally as countries move away from fossil fuels toward renewable energy, which requires building entirely new infrastructure for generating, storing, and distributing electricity. Then you have developing nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America that are building infrastructure from scratch to support their growing populations and economies. And finally, you have the reshoring and friendshoring trend, where countries are trying to reduce their dependence on geopolitically unreliable suppliers by building manufacturing capacity closer to home, which again requires infrastructure. What does all of this mean for investors? It means that companies involved in construction, heavy equipment, building materials like cement and steel, engineering and design firms, they're all going to see sustained demand for years to come. It means companies that make renewable energy equipment like solar panels, wind turbines, batteries for energy storage, they're positioned for massive growth. It means companies involved in electric vehicle charging infrastructure because, as the world transitions to electric vehicles, we need millions of charging stations. It means companies that make smart grid technology because the electrical grid needs to become more sophisticated to handle renewable energy that doesn't flow consistently. This infrastructure supercycle is not a 1 or 2 year trend. This is a 10 to 20 year trend, and we're still in the early innings. Let me tell you a quick story that illustrates why this matters. I have a friend who works in the construction industry, and about 3 years ago, he told me that his company was so backlogged with orders that they were turning down projects. They literally had more demand than they could handle. I asked him what was driving all this demand, and he listed off all the things I just mentioned. Government infrastructure spending, companies building new factories, the renewable energy build-out, data center construction. His company's stock price has more than doubled since that conversation, and they're still backlogged with work. This is the kind of sustained demand that creates wealth for investors who recognize it early and have the patience to hold through the cycles. Now, let's shift gears and talk about a sector that makes some people uncomfortable, but ignoring it would be a massive mistake. Defense and aerospace. I know, I know, nobody likes to think about weapons and military equipment, but the reality is that global defense spending is increasing across virtually every major nation. And this trend is accelerating, not slowing down. Geopolitical tensions are higher than they've been in decades. Countries are modernizing their militaries with new technologies. Space is becoming increasingly important, both for communications and for defense purposes. Cybersecurity has become a critical component of national defense. What this means is that defense contractors, companies that make everything from fighter jets to missiles to military communications equipment to cybersecurity systems, are seeing their order books fill up with multi-year, often multi-decade contracts. These are not speculative revenues. These are committed government contracts that provide incredibly stable, predictable cash flows. And it's not just traditional defense. The line between defense and technology is blurring. Drones, both for surveillance and combat, autonomous vehicles for military applications, satellite systems for communication and reconnaissance, artificial intelligence for analyzing intelligence data and for autonomous weapon systems, hypersonic missiles that can travel at 5 times the speed of sound. All of this requires cutting-edge technology, and the companies that can provide it are going to see massive investment. The aerospace side is equally compelling. The commercial space industry is exploding with companies launching satellites for communications, for internet service, for Earth observation. Space tourism is becoming real. There's serious discussion about mining asteroids for valuable materials. Countries are planning missions back to the Moon and eventually to Mars. This creates opportunities in companies that manufacture rockets, satellites, and space systems. Yes, this sector can be volatile, and yes, it's tied to government budgets and geopolitical events. But for investors with a long-term perspective, defense and aerospace represents a sector with strong fundamentals and significant growth potential. Let me ask you a question. What do you think is one of the fastest-growing consumer markets in the world right now? If you said anything other than healthcare for aging populations, you're missing one of the most obvious demographic trends of our time. The global population is getting older, and older populations need more healthcare. This isn't speculation. This is demographic destiny. In developed nations, the percentage of the population over 65 is increasing dramatically. In the United States, 10,000 people turn 65 every single day. In Japan, over a quarter of the population is already over 65. In Europe, the numbers are similar. These older adults need more medical care, they need more prescription drugs, they need medical devices, they need long-term care facilities, they need home healthcare services. But here's where it gets really interesting for investors. The healthcare sector is being transformed by technology in ways that are creating entirely new categories of investment opportunities. Telemedicine exploded during the pandemic, and it's not going away because it's simply more convenient and often more cost-effective than traditional in-person care. Wearable health devices that continuously monitor vital signs and can detect problems before they become emergencies. Genomic medicine that allows treatments to be personalized based on a patient's specific genetic makeup. Continuous glucose monitors for diabetics that have completely changed diabetes management. Robotic surgery systems that allow for more precise operations with faster recovery times. AI-powered diagnostic tools that can detect diseases earlier than ever before. Companies operating in these areas are not just serving a growing market, they're transforming how healthcare is delivered, and the companies that succeed here will generate enormous returns. Plus, healthcare has something that many other sectors don't have. It's relatively recession-resistant. People don't stop getting sick during economic downturns. They don't postpone critical medical care because the stock market is down. This makes healthcare a sector that can provide both growth and stability in a portfolio. Now, I want to talk about something that might surprise you: commodities and the companies that produce them. I can almost hear some of you groaning because commodities have been out of favor for years. They're boring. They're old economy. They're not sexy like technology stocks. But hear me out, because the setup for commodities over the next several years is perhaps the most compelling it's been in decades. For almost 15 years after the 2008 financial crisis, Commodity producers drastically underinvested in finding and developing new supplies of oil, natural gas, copper, lithium, and other critical materials. Why? Because prices were relatively low, and investors were punishing these companies for spending money on exploration and development. They wanted cash returned to shareholders through dividends and buybacks. So that's what these companies did. They cut their exploration budgets, they didn't develop new mines or oil fields, and they returned cash to shareholders. That was great for a while, but now we're facing the consequences. At the exact same time that supply has been constrained, demand is surging for many commodities due to several megatrends. The energy transition requires massive amounts of copper for electrical wiring, lithium for batteries, cobalt for batteries, silver for solar panels, and numerous other materials. Building all that new infrastructure I talked about requires steel, cement, and other construction materials. As developing nations grow wealthier, their populations consume more energy and more materials. When supply is constrained and demand is growing, prices go up. It's basic economics. And when commodity prices go up, the companies that produce those commodities make a lot of money. We're also seeing something interesting happen with energy. For years, investors were told that fossil fuels were dead, that everything was going electric, that oil and gas companies were dinosaurs. But the reality has turned out to be far more complicated. Yes, the world is transitioning to renewable energy, but that transition is going to take decades, not years. In the meantime, we still need oil and gas, and we've underinvested in production capacity. This has led to supply tightness, and when geopolitical events disrupt supply, prices spike. Energy companies are now generating massive cash flows, they're paying huge dividends, and they're buying back stock. All while trading at relatively low valuations because many investors still avoid them for environmental reasons. This creates opportunity. I'm not saying climate change isn't real or that we shouldn't transition to clean energy. I'm saying that as investors, we need to recognize reality. And the reality is that fossil fuels are going to be part of the energy mix for decades to come. And companies that produce them efficiently are going to make a lot of money during that transition period. Let's talk about something that's both exciting and a little bit scary, the convergence of finance and technology, often called fintech. The way we handle money is changing radically. Traditional banks are losing market share to digital-only banks that have no physical branches. Payment systems are evolving with everything from mobile payments to cryptocurrency to buy now, pay later services. Investing is being democratized with apps that allow anyone to trade stocks, options, and cryptocurrencies with no commissions. Lending is being transformed by companies that use AI and alternative data to make credit decisions faster and often more accurately than traditional banks. Blockchain technology is creating entirely new ways to record ownership and transfer value. Now, this sector is volatile, and there are definitely companies that won't survive, but the overall trend is undeniable. Financial services is a massive industry, and the companies that can provide better, faster, cheaper financial services using technology are going to capture an increasing share of that market. Think about it from a consumer perspective. Would you rather walk into a bank branch, wait in line, fill out paperwork, and wait days for a loan decision? Or would you rather apply for a loan on your phone, get a decision in minutes, and have the money in your account the same day? Would you rather pay 2 or 3% to send money internationally through a traditional bank wire? Or would you rather pay a fraction of that using a digital service? The answer is obvious, and that's why fintech is disrupting traditional finance. For investors, this means opportunities in payment processors, digital banks, lending platforms, companies that provide the underlying technology infrastructure for these services, and yes, even carefully selected cryptocurrency-related investments. Though I would urge extreme caution in that last category due to the volatility and regulatory uncertainty. I want to take a moment here to talk about something really important because I see people make this mistake constantly. When you're thinking about investing in sectors, you need to think about time horizon. Some of the sectors I'm discussing are going to produce steady, reliable returns over many years. Think healthcare, think infrastructure, think certain commodity producers. These are sectors where you invest and hold, where you collect dividends, where you benefit from steady appreciation as the underlying businesses grow. Other sectors are going to be more volatile, but potentially offer higher returns. Think fintech, think certain AI-related companies, think emerging technologies. These require more active management, more willingness to accept volatility, and honestly, more research to understand which companies within these sectors are likely to succeed. You don't have to choose just one approach. In fact, you shouldn't. A well-constructed portfolio includes a mix of stable, dividend-paying investments in established sectors and more aggressive, growth-oriented investments in emerging sectors. The exact mix depends on your age, your risk tolerance, your financial goals, and how much time you have until you need the money. If you're young with decades until retirement, you can afford to take more risk with emerging sectors. If you're approaching retirement, you probably want more stability, though you still need some growth to combat inflation. Let me tell you something that might change how you think about all of this. The biggest investment mistake most people make isn't picking the wrong sectors or the wrong companies. It's not investing at all, or not investing enough, or giving up after one bad experience. I cannot tell you how many people I've met who say something like, "Oh, I tried investing once and I lost money, so I just keep my money in savings now." That's like saying you tried cooking once, burned dinner, and decided to just eat cold cereal for the rest of your life. Investing is a skill that improves with practice and education. Yes, you'll make mistakes. Everyone does. But the cost of not investing, of letting your money sit in a savings account, earning essentially nothing, while inflation erodes its purchasing power, that cost is far higher than the cost of making a few investment mistakes along the way. The sectors I'm discussing today represent areas where I believe the probabilities are tilted in favor of investors over the next several years, but I could be wrong about some of them. Markets are unpredictable. Unexpected events happen. What I know with certainty is that people who consistently invest in productive assets over long periods of time build wealth, and people who don't. It really is that simple. Now, let's talk about a sector that doesn't get enough attention, but is absolutely critical to everything else we've discussed. Cybersecurity. As the entire world becomes more digital, more connected, more dependent on technology for everything from banking to healthcare to infrastructure to national defense, the potential damage from cyber attacks grows exponentially. We've already seen ransomware attacks shut down hospitals, pipelines, and entire companies. We've seen data breaches expose the personal information of hundreds of millions of people. We've seen nation-states engage in cyber warfare. This is only going to get worse, or rather, more frequent and more sophisticated. Every company, every government agency, every organization is now a potential target, and they all need to invest heavily in cybersecurity to protect themselves. This creates sustained demand for cybersecurity products and services. Companies need firewalls, intrusion detection systems, encryption, security monitoring, incident response services, employee training, and constantly evolving defenses against constantly evolving threats. The cybersecurity sector has strong growth drivers and is relatively recession-resistant because companies can't afford to cut their cybersecurity budgets even during tough economic times. One successful cyber attack can destroy a company, so security spending is non-negotiable. There's another sector I want to discuss that's related to everything we've talked about but deserves its own attention. Automation and robotics. Labor shortages are real and persistent in many developed nations due to aging populations and declining birth rates. At the same time, labor costs are rising. This creates enormous incentive for companies to automate whatever processes they can. We're not just talking about robots on factory floors, though that's certainly part of it. We're talking about automation in warehouses with robots that can pick and pack orders. Automation in agriculture with machines that can plant, monitor, and harvest crops. Automation in food service with robots that can prepare certain types of food. Automation in logistics with self-driving trucks for long-haul transportation. Automation in cleaning and maintenance. The technology has reached a point where many of these applications are economically viable. And as the technology improves and costs come down, more applications become viable. Companies that make the robots, the sensors, the software that controls them, the vision systems that allow them to navigate and manipulate objects, these companies are positioned for significant growth. Before we wrap up, I want to address something that I know some of you are thinking. This all sounds great, but I don't have a lot of money to invest. Does any of this actually apply to me? The answer is absolutely yes, and here's why. You don't need a lot of money to start investing in sectors. You can buy exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that hold baskets of companies in specific sectors for the price of a single share, which might be $50, $100, sometimes less. You can start with whatever amount you have and add to it over time. The important thing is to start and to be consistent. Someone who invests $200 a month consistently for 30 years will end up far wealthier than someone who invests nothing for 20 years and then tries to catch up by investing $1,000 a month for 10 years. Time in the market beats timing the market, and compound growth rewards early starters far more than late starters, even if the late starters invest larger amounts. Here's what I want you to do after watching this video. First, think about which of these sectors makes the most sense for your situation. Maybe you want exposure to several of them. That's fine. Second, do some research. Look into ETFs or mutual funds that focus on those sectors. Read about the major companies in those sectors. Understand what drives their businesses. Third, decide how much you can invest regularly. It doesn't have to be a lot. Even $50 or $100 a month adds up significantly over time. Fourth, set up automatic investments if possible. Pay yourself first by having money automatically moved from your checking account to your investment account each month. Fifth, be patient. Sector investing is a long-term strategy. You're not going to get rich overnight. But over years and decades, investing in the right sectors at the right times can absolutely transform your financial future. I also want you to keep learning. Watch videos like this one. Read books about investing. Follow financial news, not to panic about daily market movements, but to understand the bigger trends shaping our world. The more you understand about how the economy works, how different sectors relate to each other, how global events impact markets, the better equipped you'll be to make smart investment decisions. Knowledge compounds just like money does. Everything you learn makes the next thing easier to understand. Finally, I want to leave you with this thought. We are living through a period of extraordinary change. Technology is advancing faster than at any point in human history. Global economic power is shifting. The energy systems that power our world are being transformed. The way we work, communicate, shop, learn, and live is evolving. This creates disruption, yes, but it also creates opportunity. The investors who recognize where these changes are headed and position themselves accordingly are the ones who will build significant wealth over the next decade. The sectors we've discussed today, artificial intelligence and its infrastructure, global infrastructure rebuilding, defense and aerospace, healthcare innovation, commodities and energy, financial technology, cybersecurity, and automation and robotics, these represent my best thinking about where those opportunities exist. I could be wrong about some of them. The future is always uncertain, but I know with certainty that doing nothing, staying on the sidelines, waiting for the perfect moment, that's the surest way to miss out on the wealth-building opportunities that these sectors represent. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos. Drop a comment below, letting me know which sectors you're most interested in and why. I read every comment and I love hearing from you. Remember, your financial future is something you build one decision at a time, and the decision to educate yourself and take action is the most important one you can make. I'll see you in the next video.